Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Ted, and today I'm hanging out with
Ryan.
Eric, Steve.
And today we're going to talk about arguments and delays of the game at the table.
Drop down in the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. Learn how to game with us as well as gain regular RPG tips.
Alright, so we received an email asking about arguments at the table and delays of the game and how much it influences the fun that people are having at the table.
Delay a game, it's obviously a 5 hit point penalty. Yeah. First down.
So over the years, it's come up, once or twice. I mean, we've seen things like dice smashed, threats of violence,
physical violence, chokeholds,
no holds bars, brother. Yeah.
We've gone quite the gamut.
PvPs happened, player versus player. So sometimes not even with this group I've witnessed, there was this boyfriend and girlfriend. The boyfriend was the GM, and this was for Pathfinder, so he was a great GM, and very fair with the rules. We were playing a meat grinder game, Rappin' the Thuk, which is a very it's one of those granddaddy dungeons that your characters are going to die eventually.
Did you say rapping with a thug?
Rapping a thug. Or rapping with a thug. And so he would be very fair about the rules, and his thing was he would make a call on the rules to keep things moving, but if you had a contradictory thing, just find it in the rule book, show them, and all's good. We go by that ruling if you have the rule to point to, right? Uh-huh. Wouldn't you know, his girlfriend would burn just minutes and minutes, tens of minutes out of game time, when you're playing for 5 or 6 hours, just arguing his rules callings without wanting or willing to back it up. Point to the rule, and there you go. She was basically the person that knew the least about the rule set, who would also argue the most vocally about things. And meanwhile, we're just let's just move the frig on, because that's that person who wants to burn so much time arguing about rules.
I've heard many different stories, and I've been a part of other situations. The worst one that I've known of, a friend in a gaming group outside of here contacted me saying, look, in the Unearthed Arcana, the changeling race has the ability to shift into other races. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know the exact wording, but I believe it does use the term polymorph. So she was saying to the DM, well, since it says this, when I turn into, say, a drow or a
I get
dwarf,
those stats.
I get dark vision. She wasn't looking for all the things. She was looking specifically for dark vision because it's in a game where it matters. Mm-hmm. And the DM said no. Well, rather than let it go, they argued. Now, some players took sides, some players stood on neutral ground and just let it go. The argument lasted 90 minutes. Back and forth. People are, reaching out on Facebook, trying to get other people to support their claims. Utterly crazy. For me, dark vision is in no way, shape, or form going to influence my game. I'll give it to Dragonborn. I'll give it to humans if it's necessary to facilitate the game. And since the entire premise of this game is they're underground, I don't care about it. Sure, you can have it, but the DM was no. And 90 minutes of gameplay affected.
But okay, so you let the dark vision happen. You let that pass in the one time. Oh, I'm a Dragonborn now. Do I get the breath weapon? It just that. It's going to scope creep onto that. But I would figure out. I don't know. It sucks. They should have figured that out in the session 0 of this game's going to be largely underground. Can my changeling polymorph?
And in that situation, yes, that DM did not do a session 0. They didn't do things to corroborate where the game was going to take place, and then when he said this is where it's happening, he didn't allow players to make any kind of changes. Yeah. So it was not a good move in my opinion. It's not the way I would have handled things. But you have a point. But I think the fun aspect of the game is more important than the mechanical aspect.
But everybody's responsible for that. You can't just put it on the GM. If you're in the middle of a game, right, and it gets to a point where the GM has to make a call on how something works, and it's not clear, then I think it's the player's responsibility to abide by that.
Yeah, you have to respect the game.
And move on with the game.
If you can't settle it after one or two back and forths, you as a player, you really should say, all right, I rescind, I give up, and move on, because it is affecting everyone at the table. And again, as I had just said, the fun is more important than the mechanics.
Yeah, like that's then between sessions you hash it out and figure it out.
Right.
But you need to make a call. The dungeon master needs to make a call in that moment. Move on, because it shouldn't be minutes.
Well, and it also brings up a good and interesting point as well. Is when you do a social contract. Conflict resolution should be part of it. When we did our Cipher system game, that's actually one of the things we discussed.
A voting mechanism.
Yeah,
right?
we decided we would just vote, and once it was an odd number anyway, so the ayes had it, and whether it was right or wrong, that's what we'll just go with when we're playing, just to keep the game moving and not have to worry about stopping, figure things out. We did it for a different reason, but it's the result is the same. You should have a mechanism for resolving conflict so that it doesn't disrupt the game. You can keep playing, especially in this case. Really, you only have a conflict between two players at the table. Well, I don't know how many players are there, 4 or 5, 6 or whatever, but the rest of those players are kind of being held hostage while you guys hammer it out. And so that's killing like everybody's fun.
And player versus player, player versus player as opposed to character versus character, is different, and it's a lot harder, because then it's up to the GM to kind of step in and say, like, there's got to be a quicker resolution to this, so that the players who are, as you were saying, being captive can be brought back in and the story can continue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but really the major problem is when you get the GM roped in the thing. Like, players can have discussions, like especially if you're not recording the game, like they can have discussion kind of off the side, and maybe it's a character on character thing. But this is a situation where the dungeon master, the person that's facilitating the game for everyone else, is roped into the argument with the one player.
Right.
So that becomes a massive hurdle as well.
Now, we will say that player-on-player role-playing, if they're actually arguing in character, is different than players arguing over some kind of roll call or whatever have you.
There's semantics.
There's a distinct difference, and the arguing out of game is what's the delay, and that's the stuff we're talking about here. So besides arguments, what other kind of delays a game?
I will point out one that happened in the last session that you ran. So Dave's son, a 15-year-old kid, David, would have questions that may or may not have actually pertained to the game that was being run there. And like, I got very annoyed because what it was is his question would often be fielded by you, and every single time that question got asked, it was 3 to 5 minutes of you explaining something. Meanwhile, who's running the game? Oh, you are. Right. So the game fucking came to an ass-grinding halt about 10 times throughout the course of the session. And yeah, I was annoyed, and like a couple of times, like I said as much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I try to reel him in. It's something that he is new to this craft, and it is something that we need to talk to him. And
this gets into like the thing from the player's perspective that annoys me about other players is player laziness. Like, so he's a kid, so we have to take that with a grain of salt. But like, I've been to tables. This happened in Pathfinder Society. There's this woman who like, she didn't learn any of the rules that were pertaining to her character, and so like when it came to the table, like we would have to tell her the capabilities of her character, and like it's different from a teenage child to a grown woman in her like.
Well, in that case too,
20s,
a lot of his
30s.
questions weren't actually about the rules.
Yeah,
they were about something that someone brought up and he wasn't there for, and he wanted he just wanted to know.
Wanted
about
to
it.
be filled in on it, and you know what?
It wasn't relevant.
For your home games, it's fine. But when we're recording it and it's supposed to be like entertainment or content, like that, it becomes in a different field. Whereas like if this was a more sociable sort of game, like ours is pretty still a social game, but you guys out on YouTube are watching it, and I'm always mindful of that. Of like there are certain things that like we can't have this happen on a regular basis. But anyway, yeah. So I do get annoyed with the sorts of players that like. 2 years into playing the game system, and really you don't know how to run your character. Like that kind of drives me nuts.
I can abide a little bit of rules questions here and there.
Coaching.
But if you have no idea what you're doing week after week or month after month of playing this game, maybe it's not a game for you.
Yeah. That's when I start to question of like, all right, you can just come and hang out, and if you don't distract anybody that much, or here, run this bear. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and really, at a certain point, the answer should be, well, there's the book, look it up.
Yeah.
Why we're doing the thing, as long as it's not holding it up. Which can be another thing, is like, when you're talking about delays, and we've discussed this in other videos and other topics, and it is essentially when people don't know what they're going to do, and they're looking it up.
Yeah.
Now, occasionally, it's okay when something changes, like you have an idea of what your character's going to do, but then the situation changes, so you can't do that anymore. It doesn't make sense anymore. So you have to, you kind of have to go on the fly, because it was the person right before you that altered it.
Yeah. Like basically, like you should, in most cases, unless a dramatic change or shift has happened on the battlefield, like by the two people ahead of you, you should more or less have it firmly in your mind of what you're going to attempt to do.
In my opinion, I always, whatever character I have a default action when it comes to combat. This is what I'm going to do if I'm not doing
presented with any better options.
Right. So, like, his game, got a cleric, he's got an offensive cantrip. That's what he does. Now, if something was like, oh, well, I've got a better option that I know of, I can have that prepared, and, oh, crap, that spell's not going to work now. All right, I'll just default to that cantrip. Done. No problems. Every character, in my opinion, should have that type of situation so that they are prepared.
The default action.
Okay, well, what I was going to do didn't work. I'll default and start planning for my next action as soon as I'm done.
So I guess the other big one is like the rules questions that come up in the game, and when the DM's running, and essentially I feel like most DMs should just make a call on the fly and and you can figure it out after the game.
Right.
Or when there's downtime or whatever, you can look up the rule or whatever.
If you have like meal breaks or whatever have you, that could be a good time to be like, okay, now you're not eating, go ahead and
Otherwise, you just make a bullet point list of things that you should look up and learn those rules prior to. I mean, really, if it's something, if you're running an aquatic session, things are going to go under the sea, it's as the dungeon master, it behooves you to look up that rule set prior to being at the table, because where things are going to go.
That should be part of your planning.
But if it's a fight on the ship's deck, and somebody's like, yeah, I'm going to grapple this guy and drag him into the water, then you're like, oh, okay.
Oh, we need drowning rules.
Yeah, we need to figure this out. Yeah.
But I feel like 5th edition is very ambiguous as a system, so there's a lot of spaces where the DM is just going to have to wing it, and also a lot of times the wording is kind of open-ended.
Sometimes it's a little soft and wishy-washy,
ambiguous. Yeah, I would say. So it's up to the DM to make the call, and it's up to the players to not be like, oh, I need to look up the rules and rules lawyer this and bring the game to a grinding stop.
Yeah, I mean, the only exception I would say is this literally is the life or death of your character. In that one exception, I feel like it's on the onus is on the party to look it up and give the character a fair shake of not dying. But
I feel it should only be looked up if the character actually dies.
Yeah.
If the body hits the floor, then I guess we can look it up. If not, it didn't matter.
Yeah, no, I mean, otherwise, all right, well, I guess even if the GM, game or dungeon master did do something that's going to be against the party, and by rules, by raw, it shouldn't have gone that way. Well, I guess the encounter was that much tougher in this one instance.
Have an extra XP, everybody.
Yeah, there you go. And it's even great when you you don't use XP. So it's like the whose line is it anyway of awarding XP. You can have 5,000 XP because we don't really use it.
Yep.
Yeah.
XP, schmexp. So at the end of the day, it really just comes down to keeping things moving, respecting the GM,
respecting your fellow players. Have
in place a system for resolution that everyone agrees with before you even sit down to the table. So you don't end up taking away an hour and a half of game time for you guys to fight over something, and probably not resolve it anyway, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, and have go-to actions, default actions for your specific character as well.
Yeah, if a player is asking non-essential, non-game related questions,
They can be dealt with later.
They can be dealt with later, and you should probably stifle them and stop answering them.
Yeah, that's true too. That's the thing when you reward the behavior is then done more so. So
I get, and also side talk. Maybe that's another thing that has to be discussed in a session 0 as well, or your social contract. How much you're willing to have at the table as a group.
Yeah, I mean, you could schedule in like a midway break that's like the meal break, that all the shooting the shit and hanging out, like have a little bit of the time before the session. People like, hey, game starts at such and such time, but you're welcome to come over 30, 45 minutes ahead, just hang out. You can like offer that time up for people to socialize, have a midway break, and then like maybe when your session wraps up, you guys go hang out for a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah, with my game, I allow for almost an hour before we actually start the game, just to like hopefully everyone gets it out of their system.
You get it out of your system, you eat, you find out what you've done, especially with that group, or with our groups, we only meet each group once a month, so you're catching up on what's transpired since the last session.
Yeah, and like we're friends with all those people, so
Right,
it becomes like you do want to catch up, and it's hard as adults to get together and see each other outside of gaming time, even. So,
Indeed.
Yeah, it becomes your scheduled social time. So you have to figure out how to cover all those bases. They're just interacting in social as well as playing the game.
And when you're session 0 social contract, you can figure out whether you're looking to run a beer and pretzels game that allows for shooting the shit during the game, or if you're looking for something more serious, so that once we say, okay, game on, it's game until game is over.
Exactly.
yeah.
So in the comments below, let us know how you handle and resolve conflicts at your table or distractions. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on nerdarchy.com.
Also see us over on Twitter.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.